Alrighty, let's have a look at how to grade footage in After Effects. So let's get some footage in. So I'm going to double click in my project area to bring up the input dialog box. So I've got this file here. This is shot on a Panasonic GH5. So let's bring that in. So there's my shot there. If I double click on it, let's have a quick look at this shot. You will notice that when we peek at it, that the shot is actually playing in slow motion because this is actually shot at a high frame rate. So when, let's move on a bit. When we actually get them to walk somewhere in here, they're actually in slow-mo. Now you can control that by clicking on the clip and going right click, interpret footage, main, and then what you can do is change the frame rate here so that the shot comes in. So I could click here and then type 50 and then it would go normal speed. But I'm not going to do that, but I wanted to show you that in case that ever comes a thing. So here's our shot. So I'm going to drag that down to the composition icon. That's a cool way to do it because when you do this, it makes the composition the exact length of the clip and the exact frame size. So if you go to composition settings, you'll see that this is in fact an HD clip. Oh no, it's actually Ultra HD. So now I will actually down-res that. It's picked the right frame rate though, and it's picked the right duration, but I'm actually going to down-res this. I'm going to take it down to HD TV 1080-25 because it'll just perform a bit better if I do that. So I'll go OK, and I've got an error message. I think I need to have a clean up on my hard drive, but hopefully we'll get through this today. Okay. Now one of the things that's done is it has actually scaled the footage. So I'm going to go to my layer drop down menu, transform, and then I'm going to go fit to comp, which will scale this footage back so that it's actually fitting. So I'm taking Ultra HD and rescaling it down so that it fits HD. Okay, so a few little interesting things in there, but what we really wanted to do is do a bit of color grading. Okay, now this footage is really flat. It's a term, it's kind of a log profile. In fact, it's Panasonic V-Log. So the first thing I wanted to go through with you is how to deal with that. So there's a LUT mode there. So this is a utility called Apply Color LUT. So I'm going to drag that on to my footage. Now when you do that, you actually will need the LUTs. This Panasonic LUT, by the way, is available at the Panasonic website. So if you're missing the LUT, generally these sorts of LUTs that go with cameras can be found. The manufacturers make them available. So I'm going to click OK. This is the Panasonic V-Log to Rec 709. And you can see once I do that, the image sort of comes out looking probably much more like it showed you in the viewfinder. So now that we've got a basic look, that got us a long way there. But let's now have a look at what sort of other grading tools there are. So inside the effects and presets, I'm going to type Lumetri. Okay, there it is. Under color correction, there's the Lumetri color. Now there are other color correction tools, but I wanted to show you this one because this one's kind of got everything. It's the Rolls Royce. So let's drag that down onto the clip. And then here's the Lumetri color corrector here. So let's just zoom in on the back so you can see it in a little bit more detail. So as we open this up, like if you open up basic correction, you see, hey, look, you can actually put an input LUT here. So I could actually sit here and then bring in the same thing. If I go browse, I can then go and grab that LUT and then I can drop it in here, which I will do to show you that, hey, there's another way of doing it. Now it's currently double LUTted, so I've obviously go to this first top one where I put the LUT on and get rid of it. All right, so two ways to put LUTs on. Let's now go through the next bit of what we're doing today. So there are a lot of controls. I've started off with the basic correction and you'll find these in other parts. So you've got whites to make it brighter and you've got blacks to make it darker. You've also got the ability to reset just by individual parameter, park over the parameter, right click and go reset. If you've really gone to town and you've varied a lot of these, you can actually click here where it says reset and then bring it back down. There's also one here for auto, if you like to use the automatic functions. Okay, now that's interesting, and sometimes that might be all you need to do a quick balance. But there's more. Let's go and have a look at some of the other features. So I'm going to go to curves. Some people really like using curves. So often if you like, in this case, you might decide to get a little bit more depth there, but I want to push the mid-tone, the mid to high tones there where they are. Let's just do that, you know. That's quite common. You might even go, let's go the red curve and put a bit more warmth, really power that out. Okay, so that's an option. Using curves. Sometimes curves are really effective, actually. I do use curves sometimes. When you need them, they're really good. Let's reset that by going right-click reset. There's other curves here. I've had a play with these. I don't know how effective they are, and especially not in this shot, because this shot's very red and warm. Like I had a go at trying to get the blue by getting the color sampler and clicking right up here where the blue was quite intense. Well, it seems to be working better now. So if I click here and then drag that up and down, this is a hue versus sat. It should be pushing the blue. I can't see much though. Maybe if I open it out a bit more. So, okay. Oh, you can see it desaturating. Yeah, it is doing something. It's got a little bit of ridging here. So you need to be mindful when you do these effects. I've really pounded it too far, to be brutally honest. So maybe I'll pull that back there. So that's an option where you can kind of pick a color. That's hue versus hue. So let's reset that one. You could also try hue versus, so that's a hue versus sat. So pick a color and make it more. Let's try hue versus hue. So again, I'll pick that blue. What I can actually do is say, look, let's make that change a bit. So I can pull the color on a particular color. So I don't really have any great need to do that on this one, but sometimes that can be kind of useful to get rid of a rogue color or push a color. And then you've got a bunch of these other ones. These are pretty specialist. I'm not sure I'd be likely using this one. This one's useful though, sat versus sat. Sometimes what you can do with sat versus sat is actually pick particular saturations and push them. So like you might find that it's looking a bit desaturated down the bottom, but then you can do a point here. This is an interesting method of doing it. Take the low colors that are very undersaturated and push them up. And what happens is you don't end up maxing out the total saturation, which can be an issue with broadcasters, and yet you can give the whole thing a better, more saturated look. All right, let's reset that one though. And let's move on. So let's close up those curves. Pretty specialist, those curves. You might want to be thinking of actually using DaVinci Resolve if you're doing that, because that's a better tool. So let's duck down to the color wheels. Now this would probably be the place where I'd be most comfortable, because this is like a standard grading interface. So you've got the shadows. So we can make it darker down the bottom, and I can make it lighter up the top. So they're pretty good. So let's put a bit more depth in those shadows. And then you've got shadows, you've got midtones where you can push it up. And then you've got highlights, which is obviously the bright bits, the midtones, obviously the middle tones. So as well as that, you've also got the ability to change the balance. So like in the shadows, it might be kind of nice to increase the warmth in the shadows, because the shadows, there you go, you're really pushing that warm look. Okay. Or an alternate way is, let's just click around that so you can see that's possible too. Let's drop that back to the middle, and maybe I could take my midtones really warm and pull the shadows the other way, which is actually a thing. People sometimes do that. Now, these are pretty good because this is really standard color correction. You'll find these shadows, midtones, and highlights controls for both the amount of luminance and also changing the correction there. That's classic color grading, and that works quite well. But there's a couple of things I don't like about this, and that is that there's no units of measurement. You never actually know how much you've done. And so, although I like the controls, I'm not so keen on the fact that I don't give you any numbers. Again, I'd probably like Resolve better, but sometimes you've got to grade in After Effects, sometimes you've got no choice. Quick look at the secondaries. You've got the ability with a secondary to kind of set a key, so you can click here, try and isolate a color like that, and then once you've isolated it, you then get some sliders where you can muck around with that color. So like you can do this sort of thing. It's very sluggish, isn't it? So you can see us playing around with that blue as to how much it is. All right, let's reset that. So the idea of the secondary is to pick something specifically and isolate it. So probably enough for that. That's something you can explore. Vignette, it's kind of cool. So straight up with the vignette, the impulse will be to drag it up, and then you kind of end up with a white vignette, whereas most people these days do black ones, and you've got to drag to the left. So you can darken off the corners, classic look, which kind of looks quite good in this shot. Other values here, you've got feather. Definitely want to feather it so it's softer. And you can also adjust the midpoint as to kind of where it focuses in on, and then the roundness, like you can make it a bit more elliptical or whatever. So vignette's kind of useful. A real quick dabble on the creative. These look a bit toyish, to be really honest. Vibrance could be useful to kind of increase the general colour of it in a particular way. Let's reset that one. Faded film. I mean, it sounds good in theory, but I'm not sure that effect really does it for me. So I don't know. These feel a bit playish. All right, so that's a quick tour of how to do a colour grade using Lumetri, and also how to apply LUTS, which is all pretty useful stuff to know. Thanks for watching.